The winter of 1460 begins not with hope, but with a cold and mocking death. This is the brutal prologue to the Battle of Mortimer's Cross. On the gates of York, the severed head of Richard Plantagenet, 3rd Duke of York, stares out over a kingdom he nearly claimed. His features are frozen in a final grimace, crowned with a crown of paper in a cruel parody of his royal ambitions. Beside him rests the head of his 17-year-old son, Edmund, Earl of Rutland, murdered while pleading for mercy. The Yorkist cause appears to be effectively strangled. Leadership now falls upon the broad shoulders of 18-year-old Edward, Earl of March. He stands in the Welsh marches, receiving the devastating news that his father and brother are gone. The world expects a teenager to flee or falter, but Edward is a giant of a man, 6'4" and possessed of an iron will. He does not retreat into mourning. Instead, he begins a feverish mobilization. He understands that the dynastic struggle has reached its zenith and survival depends on a rapid resurgence. The strategic landscape of early 1461 is a precarious chessboard. Edward, based at Wigmore Castle, knows he cannot allow the Lancastrian forces to unite. Following the Act of Accord, which named his father the rightful heir, Queen Margaret has mobilized a diverse coalition to defend the rights of her own son. If the Lancastrian Western Army links with the main host in the Midlands, the Yorkist window to reclaim their position will slam shut forever. Edward is fighting for his life and his legitimacy. Edward calls upon the ancient loyalties of the Mortimer bloodline. The Lords of the Marches, including William Herbert, Walter Devereux, and Sir Richard Croft, rally their retainers. These are seasoned border warriors and veterans of the long wars in France, men who understand the iron language of the bill and the longbow. Edward gathers a professional force of nearly 3,000 men from the shires of Hereford, Monmouth, and Brecon. These men have a vested interest in protecting their homes from the coming storm. Against them moves a shadow from the southwest. Jasper Tudor, the Earl of Pembroke, and his aging father Owen have raised a dangerous coalition. Their ranks are a wild assembly of Welsh levies, French mercenaries, and fierce Irish kerns. James Butler, the Earl of Wiltshire, brings his own retinue of Irish infantry, known for their mobility and resilience. This Lancastrian host, though less disciplined than the Yorkists, carries the hope of the Queen to crush the young Edward before he can reach London. The Lancastrian army relies heavily on the Irish kerns, light infantrymen armed with darts, long daggers, and swords. These men are noted for their extreme endurance of cold and hunger, yet they lack the heavy plate armor that protects the Yorkist men-at-arms. They depend on speed and the terror of a sudden rush. Edward's advisors warn him that while the Lancastrians are a motley bunch, their sheer numbers and willingness to forage across the winter landscape make them a significant and unpredictable threat. The morning of February 2nd, the Feast of the Purification, dawns with a sky so cold that ice crystals hang suspended in the frozen air. As the sun breaks over the limestone ridges of Herefordshire, the Yorkist soldiers witness a sight that stops their breath. In the firmament, 3 suns appear to rise, shining with equal clarity before joining together into a single, brilliant lamp. To the medieval mind, this perihelion is a terrifying omen of a divided kingdom or imminent divine wrath. Panic begins to ripple through the Yorkist ranks as men marvel and grow aghast at the celestial anomaly. They believe the heavens are manifesting the end of their cause. In this moment of potential collapse, Edward demonstrates the precocious charisma of a king. He addresses his terrified troops, reframing the omen as a promise. He tells them to be of good comfort and dread nothing, for these 3 suns represent the Holy Trinity and are a certain sign that God stands with them. Bolstered by this perceived divine sanction, Edward adopts the sun in splendor as his personal badge. He transforms a meteorological freak of nature into a mandatory narrative of victory. He works with his captains to choose the ground, selecting a site near Mortimer's Cross where the Lug Valley creates a natural bottleneck. 2 limestone ridges meet here at right angles, offering a defensive position that limits the enemy's ability to maneuver. Edward is forcing the Lancastrians to fight on his terms. Edward anchors his right flank on the rising wooded ground of the hills and his left on the banks of the River Lug. This tactical placement ensures that the Lancastrians must funnel their attack into a narrow corridor. Archers are positioned at the Roman Road and Hereford Lane to stem the advance. Sir Richard Croft, a local lord, provides intimate knowledge of the terrain. The choice is shrewd. One shoulder of the force rests against a hill and the other against the river. The Lancastrian army arrives from the south, eager for battle but low on military discipline. On the morning of February 3rd, lines are drawn in the frost. The battle commences as the Lancastrian divisions attempt a piecemeal assault on the Yorkist lines. Coordination fails them from the start. James Butler leads the first charge against the Yorkist right wing. His initial rush momentarily forces the Yorkist flank to buckle and retreat across the road, but the Yorkist centre and left hold firm. The terrain and the discipline of the Yorkist archers begin to tell. From their elevated positions on the wooded slopes, the longbowmen loose devastating volleys into the unarmoured Lancastrian ranks. The sky darkens with cloth-yard shafts that shred the Irish and Welsh levies before they can close the distance. This discharge at relatively short range inflicts heavy casualties and causes a sudden swerve toward the centre of the Lancastrian army, throwing their entire order of battle into deep confusion and chaos. The centre of the battle becomes a grinding clash of steel as Jasper Tudor faces Edward's main division. Edward leads from the front on foot, his tall figure commanding and inspirational. The high quality of Yorkist armour and the discipline of the Marcher men-at-arms allow them to hold their ground against the less-equipped levies. The pivotal moment arrives on the Lancastrian left. Owen Tudor attempts an ambitious encirclement of the Yorkist left wing, but the ground between the road and river is a mire. Owen's division becomes congested in the narrow, marshy ground. As they struggle in the mud, they are met by a fierce and sudden countercharge from Yorkist billmen and reserves. The momentum of the Tudor assault snaps instantly. The Lancastrian line fragments and collapses into a general rout. Jasper Tudor and James Butler flee the field, leaving their men to face the pursuit. The Yorkists surge forward, and the demoralized Lancastrian centre breaks, turning the Lug Valley into a scene of total annihilation. The Yorkists do not merely win the field, they hunt their enemies through the frozen landscape. Thousands of Lancastrian soldiers scatter into the woods or attempt to swim the Lug. Many are dragged down by their heavy equipment and drown in the icy waters. The pursuit continues for 17 miles toward the city of Hereford. Among those taken alive is Owen Tudor, the patriarch of the clan. For Owen, the war has ended not with a ransom, but with a cold execution. On the morning of February 4th, Owen Tudor is led into the marketplace of Hereford. He believes until the final moment that he will be imprisoned, relying on his past status as the stepfather of King Henry VI. It is only when he sees the executioner's axe and the heavy wooden block that the truth finally settles upon him. He is led to the cross by Roger Vaughan, the reality of his fate becoming clear only as the executioner prepares the site for the sentence. As his red collar is removed to bare his neck, Owen Tudor utters a final, poignant reflection. He murmurs that the head which was wont to lie on Queen Catherine's lap must now lie upon the executioner's stock. The axe falls, and the founder of a future dynasty is silenced in the winter mud. His head is placed atop the highest pinnacle of the market cross. In the gruesome aftermath, a local madwoman approaches the severed head to wash away the blood and comb the hair. The madwoman surrounds the head with 100 lit candles in a haunting ritual of devotion. This act, occurring just after the Feast of Candlemas, mirrors the solar themes that defined the battle. While the senior Lancastrian leaders like Owen are executed, the strategic impact of the victory ripples across England. The victory destroys the Lancastrian Western power base and prevents a junction that could have overwhelmed the Yorkist cause. Edward has transformed from a grieving heir into a proven military commander. The momentum shifted by the three sons carries Edward toward the capital. While the Earl of Warwick is defeated at St. Albans, the news of Mortimer's cross encourages the citizens of London to bar their gates against the Lancastrian queen. Terrified of northern pillaging and emboldened by Edward's success, Londoners throw their support behind the House of York. Edward enters the city in triumph on March 2nd, the sun in splendour, now a symbol of a new era for the English monarchy. Mortimer's cross was the miracle that preserved a dynasty at the very moment it seemed doomed to extinction. It remains a masterclass in the use of terrain and leader psychology. On March 4th, 1461, Edward is proclaimed King Edward IV. He has turned a moment of potential terror into a mandate for kingship. The fields of Herefordshire still hold the echoes of that frozen morning, a reminder of the day the Son of York rose to shine over a broken and divided land. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the strategic brilliance and bloody omens of the Wars of the Roses. The story of England was written in fields like these, and we are dedicated to uncovering the logic and the legend behind history's most decisive battles. If you enjoyed this cinematic journey, please support the channel by liking this video and subscribing. You can subscribe instantly by scanning the QR code visible on your screen right now. Your support helps us continue producing high-quality historical content. Stay tuned for our next episode as we explore the consequences of Edward's rise.